morning, everybody, and welcome. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we operate, live, and gather, and recognise their continued connection to the land, water, and community. We pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Hi, I'm Nick Antonopoulos, General Manager of Small and Medium Business Segment at Australian Post, and today's webinar is the second in our new Australian Post webinar series. The first series will feature relevant and thought-provoking content designed to help you navigate your business through the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. Today's webinar will look at how you can take advantage of the recent growth in online shopping brought about by the pandemic. Since the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic, online shopping has boomed. Don't know you, but I know in our household we have shopped online like never before. Let me put this in perspective. In 2019, an average of 1.6 million households bought something online each week. This increased to 2.6 million each week in April 2020. That's another 1 million households making weekly purchases. So, how do we take advantage of this growth in online shopping? Well, that's what we're here to explore today. However, before we get started, I'd just like to run you through some housekeeping, if I may. This is your first time you've involved in an On24 webinar, or if you need a refresher, I'm going to go quickly through some of the widgets you can see at the bottom of your console. Firstly, if you have any questions during the webcast, please submit them via the Q&A widget. We'll try to answer as many of these during the Q&A session, but if we run out of time, we'll be answering all questions afterwards. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the Help widget, which is at the last widget on your console. It has a question mark icon and covers most common technical issues. You may also submit your technical questions via the Q&A widget also. We also have a feedback survey which is the second last widget on your console. So this should only take about 2 minutes to complete, and we'll appreciate if you can do that at the end of the webinar. Also, an on-demand version of the webcast will be available within 24 hours of this session and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier. You'll also receive an email once the on-demand version is available to you. Okay, with housekeeping out of the way, let's get started. I'm joined today by two of my colleagues, Dave Cervelli and Rose Yip, who are well placed to provide advice around attracting and retaining online shoppers. Dave is an Innovation Manager for DMX, a program from the Australian Post Innovation Team that focuses on helping small businesses expand by incorporating physical and digital marketing strategies. Rose is Head of eCommerce, Data Analytics at Australian Post. She's the creator and author of the Inside Australian Online Shopping Report, which was released last month. I really encourage you to have a look at this report. It is fantastic report that looks at the online shopping trends over the past year, a really deep dive into the impact of COVID-19. We've provided a link to the report in the resource widget also. We will then be joined by two Australian Post customers who have fantastic stories to share on how they have grown their business online using these and other strategies. Okay, to get us started, I'd now like to hand over to Dave and Rose. Over to you, Dave and Rose.
Thank you, Nick. Very excited to have so many people joining us here today. Good morning, everyone. We're going to start with a quick poll. I promise only one poll. As best you can you describe the level of impact COVID-19 has had on your business? Choose the most relevant answer from significant negative impact, fairly negative impact, no impact, essentially business as usual, fairly positive impact, significant positive impact. Once you have chosen, please click the Submit button. Our hearts go out to everyone living in Victoria at the moment as we move into a new phase today. Everyone's got to wear a mask, unfortunately. If you would like to scream out your frustration, I saw something recently by Iceland. It's come out with a wacky tourism campaign that encourages you to let it all out with a chance to scream or be heard in Iceland. Absolutely worth a look. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds for you to click the submit button. Okay, last chance to click the button. Now, let's have a look at the results. We've got a whole mixed bag here, which is really quite interesting. It's good to see that a lot of customers have been fairly positively impacted, and some to the extent of significant positive impact, which is great to see. Unfortunately, we are seeing a good proportion in there which are significantly negatively impacted. I think this is a good time to remind everyone there's a Q&A console which you can put your questions in. This is a good time. We've got some amazing panel here today, highly experienced in e-commerce business. So please do put your questions in there, and we'll do our best to try and address them all today. I'm going to kick off really quickly and just talk about where e-com has landed. Amidst all the chaos that's been going on, e-commerce is booming. And more importantly, many businesses are playing a critical role in getting goods to consumers. The growth, that's the number of purchases in the first 8 weeks of the pandemic alone, was up 80% compared to the same time last year. We are now sitting on week 19, and the numbers have only just softened very slightly to the 70s. Easter is now the biggest on record. It's actually 2% bigger than Black Friday and Cyber Monday, our largest, biggest event just passed. Online spend was up 95% in April. As a result, now the online penetration has reached new highs of 19.2%. So that's a massive jump from what we saw in pre-COVID, just over 11% then. What this meant is that there are more shoppers online at the moment. And as Nick mentioned before, in April alone, we saw 5.2 million households. But more importantly, over 200,000 of these are new shoppers. And what we found when we look at some of the shopping behaviors is that they're actually shopping more frequently right now. In summary, e-commerce is booming, and e-commerce is the main channel for buyers and for sellers alike. This poses a massive opportunity for small and medium businesses. I'm going to now hand over to David, and this is David, huge opportunity here. How can businesses capitalize on this boom? Can you share your top tips and secrets?
Yeah, thanks, Rose. So look, yeah, as we just heard, e-commerce really is booming. So today I want to talk about what small businesses can do to actually tap into that boom and how to attract more online shoppers. So we only have a very small window to talk through it. So if you've got any other information that you'd like about anything we touch on, just make sure you write a question in the chat box, and we'll make sure we answer it during the Q&A session or after the webinar. So today, just for simplicity, we're going to use this framework of 4 key focuses. These are 4 realizations of savvy online businesses that we're seeing play out right now. And these focuses are informed by our work in DMX, which is a startup we've created specifically for small businesses to build functional cross-channel marketing funnels that include direct mail. So let's jump into it. So to be able to attract online customers, the first thing that we need to look at is their buying behaviors, right? So for DMX customers, we use the funnel analogy. So, you want to picture your customers going through this journey. Discovery phase, which is right up at the top of that funnel where the customer is just first becoming aware of your brand. The consideration phase, right in the middle of that funnel where they're engaging with content. They're not committed yet and they're still exploring, mostly comparing you with competitors. And then the action stage, which is right down the bottom of that funnel, where customers are at that point where they either need to take action or they're ready to convert or buy or commit, whatever. So a well-crafted funnel has a single purpose, right? And the single purpose is to produce progress for our customers. And this is what we're talking about is progress either towards a buying objective, if they're the right kind of customer for your business or qualified for your product, or to filter them out of the process if they're not. So some of the ways that we're seeing small businesses win in this space right now is firstly making your content meaningful. So, this is about not posting just for the sake of posting. If you're trying to attract customers right up there in the discovery phase, it's about making your content educational and value first. But then when we're going into that consideration and action stage of the funnel, it's about strategic targeting and enticing customers on your site with a reason to commit and a reason to commit now, whether that's with, some kind of special offer or a time-based incentive. Now, if you're not sure if your web pages currently have these elements, a really good exercise you want to start with is just ask someone outside your business to test out your website, right? Have a look. Is there a strong call to action on your homepage? Is there a clear path to purchase? And is there, authentic branding that clearly reflects your values and showcases your product and service? So the real thing, the headline here is do you have something for customers who are at any stage in their buying journey? And the other thing that you want to consider is which channels you're using to target customers are at each stage of the funnel. For example, your Instagram, your Facebooks, these social channels are usually more cost effective at the top of the funnel in that discovery phase used for activity like building audiences and brand awareness. But when you're targeting customers in the consideration or that, action buying stage, this is effectively when people are actively searching with intent, it usually makes more sense to use Google ads to trigger action on your channel. So this first realization is just understanding the buyer journey, making sure that you're using the right channels and that you have customer content for all levels of each stage of their buyer journey. So the next big realization that savvy online businesses have is that they need to model the market, right? And this is a critical approach that we use for our DMX customers. In today's digital marketplace, it's actually really easy to peek over the fence of what your competitors and other industry leaders are doing. So let's say for argument's sake, you sell dog training, right? So to do your research, you might type into Google best dog training in Melbourne, for example. Now, obviously, you, just like your competitors, will be presented with your 3 to 5 Google ads at the top of the page and the rest of the search results. And this is insanely useful information. What do we already know about these competitor ads that show up? Well, we already know that that's a really expensive search. So it's really expensive to show up there. And all these words and combinations are really expensive to bid for. Best dog training Melbourne, they're all very expensive. So with this one activity, we can already assume that there's something about the ad, the angle, and the language that's working. Why? Because if your competitor is paying Google these high rates, they're likely only doing it for any period of time because they're making money somewhere along the line. So tracking your competitors' ads and angles, and also particularly the landing pages that those ads take the traffic to, we call these examples, and tracking these examples of what's already working in market, your control, right? Our North Star at DMX is don't be creative, be scientific. Now, the other probably 50% of our job at DMX is to be across the cutting edge of what's working. What conversion tools are working right now? Mostly because our customers are small business customers. They can't afford to waste money testing to learn what works in their market. So if you look, for example, say at Facebook right now, what's the conversion tool that's really, really converting, really working very well? We call them Edu Quizzes. And you've probably seen them. An Edu Quiz is one of those Facebook ads that you click on, and then it takes you to like a 4 or 5 question survey, except it's not just a survey. It's actually kind of cool. It's if it's done well, it's educational. It's often entertaining along the way, and it's secretly qualifying if you're the right kind of customer for that product or service. But the other really key thing is it's incentivized. It offers value up front because customers won't interrupt their day for free, right? So if you want a really great example to model in the market, jump on Facebook, go to Naked Wines, go to their page, and click through their sign up button. You'll see that their incentivized CTA is to fill out a 2-minute survey to get $100 of free wine. Now, if you think about that, if you're in any way interested in wine, you're clicking on that CTA all day long. So that second realization is model the market, use what's working. Okay, so the third realization of savvy online businesses is that content marketing is critical. So there are distinctly 3 experiences that a stranger has to go through before they're going to buy from you online. Now, this is totally backed by science, but we build this successfully and we test this successfully every single day for our small business customers. So this is how it works. So effectively, to buy from you online, they have to trust you, right? Otherwise, people just don't take out the wallet, hand over the credit card. Now, to trust you, they have to like you. Otherwise, they won't hang out on your website long enough to find out if you're trustworthy. And to like you, they have to know that you're out there. You know, if you don't show up in their feed, you don't exist, so they can't come looking for you. So we use this know, like, trust principle to help businesses get their value, to shine through their content and to help people buy. So how do you actually do this when it comes to content marketing? Well, know is kind of easy. Know is about consistency. It's about, posting and or sending out your emails consistently and always adding value. Like in your content marketing, this is all about authenticity, making sure that you're not afraid to let your values shine through and to focus on customers that resonate with that rather than just try to be everything to everybody. And trust is about building your credibility in your content marketing. Demonstrate your expertise. So use content marketing, develop content that builds KLT, that know, like, trust method. Now, the final realization that you need to cut through the noise to be heard, right? At the moment, we're finding that physical mail marketing is definitely our number one secret cut-through channel in terms of ROI for small businesses. Why? When you think about it, all the other channels are super full of noise. Your Facebook feed is full. Your email inbox is full. But if you look outside the front of your house, your mailbox is not full. In fact, it's relatively empty. And if you compare it, in digital terms, the open rate for physical mail are just incomparably higher. But, the other thing is like who doesn't love getting stuff? Like, everyone loves getting stuff in the mail, particularly right now where we're finding that people's relationship with their mailbox has really changed during this interesting period of time. Now, the other thing to think about is physical mail is pretty much the only channel that allows you to engage with all 5 of your customers' 5 senses, and that's what makes mail really memorable when it's done well. But the other thing is that we're finding from a logistics standpoint that the advances in technology recently have made it really easy to mix digital marketing elements and also to be able to personalize and what we call hyper target with physical mail, that's something that we used to have to rely on digital to be able to do. So we're finding for our small business clients at DMX, we're finding that being able to market and more importantly remarket via physical channels is an absolute game changer right now. So what we talk about every day to our customers is, in today's marketplace, attracting and keeping online buyer attention at scale. It's no longer about generic messaging to big audiences. It's about targeted, it's about personalized, and it's about value first. So this realization, find channels that cut through and find out how to use physical mail to, elegantly in your campaigns to get a massive boost to your efforts. So we've super briefly talked about how you can attract online buyers here. Now I'm going to hand back over to Rose, who's going to talk to you about how to keep them. So back over to you, Rose.
Thanks, Dave. That was great tips here. I love those Edu Quizzes. Such a smart way to educate and build trust. Totally recommend a look at how Naked Wine has done this. A slight pivot. Let's have a look at the voice of the customer. When we ask customers what are the main barriers to doing more shopping online, there were 4 key groups that keep popping up each time. The good news is that most of these can be addressed today. Now, let's try and unpack some of these. I'm going to take the first one, the top of the list there is shipping fees. We all know it's human nature to be really put off, especially when you reach the end of your shopping cart to realize you've got to pay an extra X dollars for shipping. And we know there's no such thing as free shipping. However, free shipping thresholds have been a great way to actually deal with this. And it's more widely used these days. Very, very common now. We're seeing a lot of retailers offering things like free shipping over a single threshold. So we see like shipping over $50 or $60. These strategies are amazing and they're encouraging higher spend. And not only that, buyer feels that I know I certainly when I actually make myself get to that threshold, that I've succeeded in getting something for free when it's actually not free. The other one off the top of the rank is we're talking about delivery speed. And the thing to note there, it's up a few percentage points as well. So something to really, really focus on and get this right. What I actually want to share with you is a little tip. So shoppers like options and they like having control. So have a look at offering other alternatives, other faster alternatives that will help them get their product a lot faster. But also very, very, try to make it work in tandem with your basic shipping threshold. So I'm talking about upselling. So upselling or upgrading. So look at things like for an extra $2, you'll get it tomorrow, or for an extra $8, you'll get it tonight. So things like that are very, very great tips. And now we're seeing some really savvy retailers doing that right now. The next one off the rank is returns. And returns has been really much a bugbear for a lot of retailers for a long time. And you'll see on that list there's 3 big ticket items that are each one of these are really, really important to get right. And I can't stress enough how returns is where you actually start to build your brand and build your trust with your customers a lot more. If you look at being too expensive to return a product, similar, very, very similar strategies to free shipping, but consider looking things like returns with store credits. So things like this will start to ensure your customers will come back to you. But what I would really like to talk about is the last 2 items. And I want to give you a great example of one of our panel here today, Bared Shoes, and how they tackle it through their returns policy. So before I pull a few words from their returns policy here, I just want to note very, very quickly is that majority of shoppers check their return policy before committing to a purchase. So what do you want customers to see before they make the final commitment? It's such a huge opportunity at this time to actually build that connection and provide the assurance. So a couple of words from Bared Shoes policy, and thank you, Anna, for this. First things first, we want you to love your Bared Shoes, like really love them. We'll always try to make sure your shoes fit just right, but sometimes, despite our many fitting options, some shoes and some fit just aren't a good match. Or maybe you've changed your mind. No matter the reason, we'll offer an exchange, store credit, or a refund. It goes on to give you more information on the process. Such a great way to build trust and assurance to the customer to actually make that last step to make that purchase. So I can't stress enough how important returns is to build that brand and your trust for consumers. The last one on the list is experience. And this is probably the more tricky one. So prefer to visit a store, and not surprisingly, we're seeing an increase in percentage points, considering we're in continued limitation of social interaction at the moment. What we've seen is Q Clothing. Q Clothing has recently introduced what they call a virtual in-store styling session. And what they're using here is stylists as your best friend where you can actually interact and talk with. So amazing innovation, great simple thing that they can actually do out there. So I would encourage to keep a lookout as we're likely to see more innovation in this space as we all adapt to this new normal. My last slide is really talking about retention. So David was focusing a lot about acquisition, and I think retailers probably don't pay enough attention, not enough focus actually in retaining customers. A lot of focus is about driving how many new customers have you got. We need to make sure there's a clear balance between making sure that you are looking after your existing customers as well as you are trying to drive new acquisition. The best way I'm going to try and look at this, I'm trying to keep it to very simple, a 3D method, so we can actually remember. So we look at the data, delight, and deliver. But before I go into great detail about some of the tips that are in there, I'd like to share with you a story from my experience with my broadband provider, who's actually not my broadband provider anymore. So I was with this broadband provider for over 10 years, and as my kids were growing up, we were using more and more data. those days we had to keep track on how much data we use, or we get shaped, which is such a horrible thing. I'm so glad we don't have to worry about that anymore. After many months of getting shaped, I went onto their website to look at upgrading our plan. To my amazement and horror, there were far better plans and much cheaper ones too. Suffice to say, I'm no longer using that provider. So 10 years of lifetime value just evaporated for that retailer. So very important to keep a healthy balance between acquisition and retention. So back to the 3 pillars, and I'm just going to, I've got a bit of timing here to get to. So just very quickly on the data pillar, what I mean on the data pillar when I talk about, it's really two very strong perspectives you need to look at in terms of your data. One is essentially getting your data in order. And what I mean by that is ticking off all the basics. So basics things like ensuring your product specification and all the information are up to date, and more. So give tips, care information, reviews, and so forth, so shoppers will not look anywhere else. And if you're making an offer to new customers, balance that risk against your existing customers to make sure you're not going to likely to lose them. Secondly, capture information. Capture the information for every single touch point with your customer. I can't stress that enough, because that's when you use that to communicate back. Product recommendation, new releases, and notifications. Very, very important pillar. It is the foundation that builds up to the other 2 pillars. Now, in the delight pillar, it's so powerful hearing Dave talk about trust. And delight is probably the best spot where you can start to build your brand a lot more and build that trust, where you actually take a step further. I'll give you a great example. And Shhh Silk, Olivia, I love your 100-day trial. It's a great way to delight customers. You can try a silk pillowcase for 100 nights. What a great way to delight and start to build your brand and your trust. Great example there. Hot topic at the moment in Melbourne, silk face mask. Shhh Silk ran out of face masks. Great way to delight and a pure sense of purpose for a lot of consumers out there. Lastly, I think I just want to talk about in building your brand is talking about what makes it memorable. What we tend to forget is that in the e-com world, the first and only physical touch point is when a person receives a parcel. I remember my first Tim Tam unboxing surprise and delight, and certainly to my son as well, when we saw the Tim Tam in the box from an Adore Beauty. Such a simple gesture, but very, very effective, and certainly very memorable for me and for my family. Have to think about, what do you want your brand to be known for, and what makes it a memorable experience. Moving on to the very, very last pillar. Deliver to your promise, and very much to do so when things go wrong, and things will go wrong. Let the customers know. This is probably the best time to over-communicate, and also work with your logistic partner to align delivery notification. Remember, the clock starts when the customer hits the play button. So I'm going to stop there. I think I'm slightly running out of time now. So do put your questions forward. I hope you found this useful and take away some practical tips that you can use. Next, back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Rose, and thank you, Dave, for a very insightful presentation with some really great ideas, and certainly the mixing of both physical and digital channels is some really good advice. I would now like to welcome two very special guests to our panel discussion. And these are Olivia Carr, who's founder and CEO of Shhh Silk, and Anna Baird, founder and owner of Bared Footwear. Thank you, Anna and Olivia, for joining us today, and to share your experiences in attracting and retaining online customers. I'm interested to go back to the start of the stories that you respectively have. So, Olivia, if I can welcome, and if I can start with you, please. You have an amazing story in how you started your business, including a hugely successful way of creating awareness with a certain celebrity influence, I understand. So please tell us a little bit about your journey. And how you managed to secure the celebrity influence to create awareness of your brand in the early days.
Yeah. Firstly, welcome everybody. Thank you so much to Australia Post for inviting me on today. I'm absolutely honoured to take part. I started building my journey 5 years ago this week. So it's been an amazing week of reflection. So yes, let's touch on that famous story. I left a general manager role with a large retailer in Australia to, pursue my dreams, as they say, and I jumped in, fully in without much thought to it. And much thought meant I actually also did not have a marketing budget. I had enough money to buy some stock. And then I thought to myself, oh gosh, stock's eaten most of the money that I had put aside. How on earth am I going to get people to find out about my products and on a large scale with little money? So call me crazy, call me opportunist, I don't know. I thought the easiest thing to do would be to buy a plane ticket to LA. I found some addresses, some business records online for Kris Jenner's office residence, which also happened to be at the time, which I didn't know, the home that Kanye and Kim were living in. And I hired a car and talked my way over to, as I said, I had an appointment with Kris Jenner Communications, and I was lucky enough to be able to go and hand deliver those silk pillowcases. So I will say, full disclaimer, I had absolutely no idea about gated communities when I bought that ticket. And I also had no idea that they could shoot to protect over there. So this is not a method I would use today. But in saying that, there are so many amazing ways you can get your products in the hands of some of the world's biggest celebrities that don't include trespassing and getting your way into gated communities. So I definitely am a huge advocate for trying to get your products in the hands of as many high-profile people as possible for very little budget. Yep.
Okay, Olivia. That's an amazing story. Thanks, Olivia. Anna from Bared Footwear. That's a tough story to follow, a tough act to follow, Anna. But you came through a different way. You were a podiatrist and back in 2008, you took that leap of faith and started Bared Footwear. Please share with us your journey to this point.
Yeah, my story is not quite as glamorous as Olivia's. Mine's really mundane, but I was a podiatrist. I'd been practicing for about 7 years, and I was every day, I was seeing women and trying to recommend them into a shoe that was actually technically good for them and comfortable. I had a wad of brochures of shoes that were clearly designed for older customers, and I'd flick through these things and go, this one's not too bad. So clearly there was a gap in the market, and one day I just Googled, I Googled Australian shoe manufacturers or something to try and find me a factory to make me some shoes. I knew what features I needed in the shoe to make them good for you, but apart from that, I was completely clueless. But I found a little factory in Sydney, and I suppose my shoe journey began. I cut back podiatry to 4 days a week and started travelling to Sydney most Mondays to develop the product. It took about 3 years before I had something to sell, and I opened my first little store in Toorak. That's when this exciting idea turned into this really harsh reality. I spent a lot of time and energy and money on a business that was incredibly slow to get going. I spent all my capital on this huge order of shoes that didn't really fit anyone very well and were now looking back really hideous. So somehow I survived those really dark first probably 4 or 5 years and sort of came out the other side. And I think if you look at the data around startups, most first businesses fail and most second businesses succeed, but most business owners never try a second time. And after surviving those years, I know why that's the case. It is really, really hard. We sold our house, we loaded up on credit card debt, we sort of borrowed money to try and get the next order of shoes and survive it. So, yeah, it was really tough, but it was definitely worth it. I think, 12 years on, we've got a great team, a really good business, 3 physical stores, but a really big, engaged online customer. So it is worth it if you can stick at it.
Thanks, Anna. Certainly, you're a classic overnight success, 12 years in the making, as they say.
Absolutely.
I'd like to focus a little bit about the question around acquiring customers, certainly in the early days. And Olivia, if I can direct this to you, if I may. We heard about the great story around how you managed to land the Kardashians crew to use your products. Just tell us a little bit about what else are you doing in the influence space? Are you trying to get any others? So would you recommend this strategy, and how would you recommend it? And what other strategies are you using to attract new customers?
Yeah, so it's something, so I studied for a little while back in, 8 years ago. And so I'm a huge believer that if you have $1 invested in PR, but make that dollar stretch as far as you can. So, and do it yourself. Like, I'm not suggesting you need to go and pay agencies, just start being really creative. So yes, we do still focus heavily today. We run all of our own celebrity gifting ourselves. I can't emphasize enough how easy it is these days with social media to actually start making your own contacts. So we don't go direct till 5 years ago. We certainly didn't go direct in a lot of our celebrities. We go to their stylists, we go to their hairdressers, we go to everybody of their centre of influence. I talk about this kind of spider web. So if you want to go after, I don't know, Brad Pitt, find everybody that Brad Pitt knows who definitely doesn't have million followers. Approach those people and get yourself everywhere in Brad's world, because then when you do eventually send it to Brad's address, he's already seen your product and he thinks, wow, this product's everywhere. It's not everywhere. It's just everywhere in his circle of influence. That's the kind of the way that I approach it now, and I suggest people try and do the same.
Very, very, very interesting strategy. Thank you, Olivia. Anna, if I come back to you, if I may, back in 2008, we had, as you said, some tough days, and your biggest challenge was trying to build a brand from scratch and really extend, I guess, the awareness beyond your podiatry clients and get new clients. Share with us how you managed and what did you do around getting new clients in those early days?
When we first started, Facebook was in its infancy and Instagram didn't exist. So initial branding and marketing was, through traditional PR, word of mouth. We've marketed to health professionals. But then I think in about 2010, Facebook we started using as a marketing tool, and we quickly learned that an increase in followers does lead to conversions. And then with the Instagram kind of launch, we jumped on board quickly with that and quickly learned that it was all about content, and that these platforms are so powerful because you can actually target the customer that you want. So, you can target, where they shop, where they live, their age. And, with every spike in our following across certainly Instagram, we've seen a massive jump in our sales. So it's been really the last 6 years, our only marketing spend really has been across social media and our direct email campaigns to our customers who are very loyal. So there are two main platforms. Facebook and Instagram obviously know how to get brands to pay now, so they know how to make their money. So you've really got to invest to get your product out there. So the product has to be great. You've got to have great content. We've got an in-house photographer. We do probably 2 photo shoots a week. So, the shoes have to look great. They've got to be in front of people. And then, I agree with Dave that it's also, certainly in COVID times, it's got to be meaningful. It's sort of breaking through to, it's a very saturated market. So how can you produce content that people actually want to see and engage with? But it's certainly been a really powerful platform for us.
Okay, thank you. But turn back to Olivia again. Olivia, Rose spoke about the barriers to online shopping that historically has prevented some people from really jumping online. Things like shipping costs, return processes, wanting things immediately. What are some of the strategies are you using or have used to break down these barriers to make it easy for your customers to do business with you?
Yeah, so I take the mentality that, it has to be a customer first, which sounds like a cliche, but you truly need to put yourself in the shoes of every customer that is parting ways with, $50 or $100 to invest in our brand. I don't like anything worse than getting a general, you get your package and something's wrong, and then you have to go through, 3 different ways of email contacting. It's all difficult. You can't find a phone number on websites, or send a bot through. It makes it really challenging. One thing, it's so simple, but I've got it sitting next to me and I've been text messaging customers during this morning. You have to be responsive. You have to have multiple options for customers to be able to make it so easy for them to contact you. So I still reply after hours to every single DM on Instagram or Facebook regarding a customer inquiry. We have 2 customer service phones sitting in our warehouse all day. I just think making yourself accessible, because a customer that complains or a customer that calls is actually a high value customer because they actually care enough to go to that extra length. And returns, like make them so simple. Like our returns process, I said before, this is not something we would publicly state. I mean, this is a public forum, I will say it. As a brand, we believe in lifetime returns. Now, we don't put that on our website because obviously that wouldn't be very smart. But I mean, I have, emails to prove that. We just don't believe that if a customer's paid for a product 3 years ago and, and something's happened to it, just be a good brand and be empathetic. I think if we had a high return rate, we'd have to review that, but we don't. What I meant, so we have 100-day returns on our website, but I think just care, like just genuinely care about customer service and great customer service.
Fantastic. Thanks, Olivia. We heard about acquiring customers, but retaining customers is just as important. And we know typically it costs us 5 times more to sell to a new customer, acquire a new customer versus selling an existing one. Hence, I'd like to talk a little bit about how you guys have been able to create repeat business from your customers, and ultimately make these customers advocates for your brand. So, Anna, I'd like to turn to you first, if I may. You mentioned that much of your success has been downgraded down to generating repeat business. You use email. How was the key, I guess, to get you to this inbuilt position where you've got such a good repeat business?
We do have a really amazing loyal customer, and I think it's really 2 reasons. Both are equally as important. One, it's got to start with the product. The product has to be great, and I think whenever I've started working with factories, they hate me for the first 6 or 12 months because I'll sample something 10 times because I really care about how the shoe fits. And most brands, to my surprise, actually don't really care about how the shoe fits. So the product is key, and that has to be number 1. But then the other reason that we really have the loyalty of our customers is that we, like Olivia, it's our customer service. And that comes down to people. I remember hearing Andrew Banks speak a few years ago, and he recalled the time that someone asked him, I think when he had a big recruiting business, someone asked him, who trains your team? And he said, their parents do. And I think that really resonated with me because we hire people that are amazing to begin with, and then I just have to train them in fit and shoes and feet. And I think that, these days with online, it is all about trust, and it keeps coming up. I think brand integrity and trust is absolutely key. And I think, your customers have to trust that they'll get the product. If there's a problem, they'll be looked after straight away. And that just, is how the most important part of the business. And I think now integrity goes further, and I think now I expect every brand I buy off, I expect that they care about the effect that they're having on the planet. I care that if they're a successful business, that they're also giving back to something bigger than just selling product. So I think brand integrity is a really important part of a successful brand, and that comes from the people that work in your team believing in what they're doing. And I think, it's always comes down to people.
Okay, thanks, Anna. Great. Olivia, back to you, if I may. You've positioned Silk as a luxury brand, and certainly some of the people who use it would certainly attest to that. And I could have guessed that the customer experience you have to deliver has to be amazing to get these customers to come back and repeat business. What have you done to make that first customer experience with you just a little bit extra for your customers?
Yeah, so it changes regularly. I think that's the important thing, is it just can't be one kind of approach and keep that forever. That gets stale. It doesn't become authentic anymore. So if we take COVID as an example, I put personal, and this takes time, but I don't really care. It's what I believe in. Back in March, I put personal little notes on every single order that came out, just thanking people for supporting small, for letting them know that it was allowing me to keep my staff employed during a really tough time. I mean, being in luxury, we took a massive hit when COVID first hit. Now, yes, it's a bittersweet feeling that face masks have kind of saved us in the last week, but luxury really took a dive, and we fall in luxury. But I think what's important is that also I think our customers engaged with us generally before they actually purchase. So to Anna's point, we have a huge focus on our social media. So most people that buy from us, they actually already know us. They've heard my Founder Fridays where I get on and I talk about how many orders we've had. I talk about what we do with that money. I'm very transparent with, how much we donate, where we donate to, all the care packages that we send out during COVID. I mean, we've given back since day one. It's at the core of our business as well as customers. But you need to change it up. You need to be real. You need to share your story. People, like Anna said before, it's not just a product. I believe probably 80% of people who buy from our brand may have known about us from back in the day with this, the crazy celebrity story, but in actual fact, they've fallen in love with us. They've fallen in love with what we do, who we are, what we care about. And that's really important to me. Like it's so important to me that customers love us and that they know who we truly are, which is so much more than the celebrity silk pillowcase, to be honest. That's just what put us on the map. Yeah.
Fantastic. Both remarkable stories that, and I'm hearing from both of you, obviously, it really came down with a lot of blood, sweat and tears. And I know it's not always been smooth sailing with so many startups and small businesses not tuning in today. Let's finish with some words of wisdom from each of you. If I can ask you, what is the one big lesson you've learned along your journey? And along with that what is the one piece of advice you would give viewers who are just starting or in the early days of their online journey? I'll start with you, Anna.
I think the big lesson is bring your team along. I think that's the most important thing. There's nothing more powerful than an engaged team, and having your team see their job as an investment in their own future, I think is the key. Then they're not, they're not in this business on your own. You've got this team of people driven and motivated to make this thing work, and they genuinely believe it. So again, it's all about people and get them on the journey with you. Another quick one, I think that, generosity pays off, whether it's generosity and gifting your product in the early days, generosity in your staff, in their remuneration and in praise. And then, if you're lucky enough to actually make a profit, then generosity on a more broader scale to give back to society and those less fortunate than we all are. And my piece of advice, what have I got? I suppose, remember, no one starts a business without feeling pain. So if you're in the dark days and you're hearing people saying, oh, if it was that easy, someone else would have done it, or what if someone copies you and does it better? If you really believe you've got a niche and you've got the passion, then no one will do it better than you. So stick at it and it'll be worthwhile.
Fantastic. Olivia, what's your lesson and your advice?
Yeah, so my big lesson is manage your money well. That took me a long time to really, I guess, appreciate that. And in all honesty, probably COVID's taught me that lesson more than ever. I say that because in the early days, it's so hard to get swept up in this whole invest to grow, just throwing money everywhere. You really need to manage your money now more than ever. And then my best piece of advice is just get creative. Don't think that because someone has, 1 million followers or 100 million followers that they're not touchable and that they're not still human. But you need to be really personal with your approach. Don't just send your product in an Aussie Post box and, with a nice label on it and send it off. You need to actually, the Aussie Post box is fine, but what's inside there has to be so personal. When celebrities can get their hands on anything these days, make yours unique to them. Put some embroidery on it. Do whatever you can. Find out their favorite colors. Like, it has to be incredibly personal, and have a go. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We can go on for this for a little longer, but I'd like to now turn over to some questions from our viewers. So to help us do that, I'd also like to ask Dave and Rose to join us back, and we'll try to answer some questions that our viewers have asked. And the first question actually is to you, Olivia. What do you think about returns and refunds? How does this affect your customer satisfaction?
Yeah, I said it before, we have an incredibly low return rate. I have no idea if it's due to the quality of our product. I'm assuming it is. I've slept on products myself that I've still got 5 years later. But I also think we have a really low return rate because we're in a business where there's not a huge size range. So, we sell pillowcases in 2 sizes. So I need to acknowledge that, we don't have, it's not a fashion brand with, it's a pretty simple sizing product. So that's why we're probably lucky in that regard. But even if we do have a higher return rate, you need to make it fair. Like, it's, people are investing money. If it's not right, just do the right thing. Yeah.
Okay. I've got a question for you, Anna. What are some of the ways I can bring the in-store experience online? Obviously, having started having a retail presence and online, it's a good question.
For us, it kind of was a COVID hit at a time that was actually really okay for our business. I won't say great because it's not great for anyone, but we were literally launching live chat in the week that COVID hit. So we just moved all of our amazing customer service people right onto live chat. We've been looking at different virtual options as far as they can actually see our team in the store, and we're sort of testing things at the moment. But yeah, I think at the same time, our returns is obviously, ours is tricky because it is shoes and it's sizing, but we do free returns. If it doesn't fit, we'll send you 2 more pairs to try, send them all back for free. We don't send the return to sender label. We make them have to contact us so that they get the people behind the brand, and they can say, what's going on? You know, maybe we suggest these 2 pairs, give them a go, send them all back if they don't work. So we try and make that touch point about the people again. So our customer service, you know, that in-store we try and bring online, and it actually really does work for us. I mean, we invest really heavily in our team. We've got a team of 90 every week basically on, and customer service is most of it. So we've got a lot of people, but they're all good and they know how to look after the customer.
Okay.
Did I answer?
Yes. A question for Rose. Rose, returns can be expensive for small business. What are some other strategic businesses can use to help? What are some other strategies, business can use to help give customers confidence and make returns easier?
Thanks, Nick. It's back to, you know, what Olivia and Anna's talking about. It's building your lifetime value with your customer. I know it is expensive for returns, but you need to start measuring the data to see, you know, over a lifetime for that particular customer, what's the value you're going to get from them? So extremely, extremely important. So other strategies to look at is look at store credits. Store credits to start to build up so that customers will come back to you rather than just pure refund. That could be a good strategy as well.
Okay. Dave, we're a new business trying to get our brand and products in front of people. We're mainly using Facebook advertising at the moment. What else should we be looking at to increase our brand exposure?
Yeah, good question. This is a super common question that we get a bit. The real question is should you be looking for more brand exposure and going broader, or should you be focusing more heavily on your one key fan or the perfect customer? So typically, your resources will only go so far across any channel platform. So you might want to, if you're looking for just more exposure, I would suggest that rather than exploring other channels, really zeroing in on what you can get out of Facebook. So Facebook and Insta. A good rule of thumb here is before you sort of move off, you want to be de-risking and validating where you spend your money. So are you getting the right audience with Facebook? And how do you measure if they're the right audience? Well, do they click on your ads? Do they go to your web page? Do they click through to your landing page? Do they engage with your call to action? And do they buy your product? And if they don't do all of those things, then before you go out to other channels, you might want to go and tweak each of those elements. So, the ad, the landing page, does the landing page convert? Does the problem solution fit that they find on your page? Is that right for that customer? And is there an offer that makes them trigger? If the question is more around how do you get more sales, which often is what people really want, as I was saying before, you might want to look at Google Ads, and people stay away from it because it's significantly more expensive per activity, per click. But it's more expensive because it creates conversion. So if you think about that funnel analogy again, people who are at the bottom of the funnel and ready to buy, they're on Google Ads. You expect to pay more, but your overall cost of acquisition should be lower, if you're looking for acquisition. With Facebook, it's really about getting them and retargeting them, nurturing them all the way along their journey so that you can take them from a high-level, high-in-the-funnel customer all the way to a buying and then repeat customer. That would be my best advice. Go deep rather than go broad.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Good idea. Olivia, another one for you. Do you have any issues or benefits associated with retaining customers due to eco-friendly packaging? And if so, how did you decide as a business to change your packaging?
Yeah, so we're actually going through this at the moment. We've found an incredible manufacturer locally here in Australia. So we have a sustainability team lead here who happens to be my 19-year-old daughter, who cares a lot about the planet, as most of us do, but particularly in that age group. So she's really driving the change for us. We tried reducing plastic from as many products as possible about a year ago. It is still a challenge. I will say in Australia there needs to be more focus on like recycled packaging, recycled, thermal stickers and all the rest of it. But we don't necessarily get a lot of pushback, but all of our products have moved into, cardboard as opposed to plastic. We are conscious of it. I mean, we're not perfect. It's something that we're constantly reviewing and constantly looking at. I will say one thing that we love about our packaging is that we have a personal note on there that talks about all of the give back that we do and really thanking our customers. Again, I think packaging is so, I guess, underlooked from a brand. It's that first touch point when they receive it in the mail. You really need to make a wow impact with your customer, a bit like the Tim Tam, but the Tim Tam's like inside the box. I'm talking about the physical, thing that they first pick up from the post office or from the doorstep.
Thank you. Thanks, Olivia. Anna, I want to go back to you, if I may. As a podiatrist, you went to become a very successful business person. Where did you learn? How did your early days, who did you turn to for advice and guidance? How does somebody being up from a podiatrist becomes a business person running a business? So interested to know how and where did you reach out to? How did you learn? Where did you go?
I think, how did I learn in the early days? I did have great mentors. I read every business book possible, how to stay positive when things were really crap. I think changing from a podiatrist to, a retail, I think probably comes, it's probably some of it is innate customer service. My dad was a mechanic, finished school in year 10, started a mechanics business in Range Rovers. But I remember, as a kid, we'd be full driving somewhere most weekends. There'd be some car broken down, Dad would stop and he'd remember the number plate. He'd remember the name of this customer. Dad understood customer service, so well. And I think I grew up with watching what good customer service and brand loyalty is, and that was loyalty for people to keep coming back to his business. So I think that, brand loyalty is something kind of just innate, that you know how to look after customers. But yeah, I think business books are great, mentors, people that have done it before, and you can learn from their mistakes rather than making every mistake yourself is really important too.
Okay. Rose, if I can have a question for you, because a lot of things are changing around us, driven by COVID and other factors. Can you please share with our audience, what do you see as the future of online shopping? What is next in terms of user experience that we expect to see from in the online space?
That's a great question. It's amazing, Nick. So this is COVID has actually accelerated online shopping by a number of years now. So you notice most businesses now, online is pretty much like the main channel for most businesses. And we expect to see that in the next few months, or even right now, lots of innovation are really happening in this space. A lot of things are being fast-tracked. I would expect we'll see a lot of technology companies coming into play, building more in-store, bringing the in-store experience into online and making it more personal to be able to have that personal touch point and personalization more coming through. We would expect, I'm guessing we'll probably see a lot more of that as well. And in terms of the future, it is really hard to say, but I'm guessing that the experience for most consumers now are probably more reserved moving forward, because with this working from home and isolation, that's more likely to remain pretty much pretty fluid, at least for the next year or so, until there's a better solution out there at the moment. So for a lot of businesses, this is an amazing time to actually change your experience and build that personalization to make it much more intimate, if you can, in an online world. I hope that answers the question. It is a really, really tough one and very, very futuristic.
Okay. Thanks, Rose. Really well. Well, this is a fantastic discussion, and I'm sure we can continue for hours. Unfortunately, we're quickly running out of time. There's no doubt the pandemic has really changed the way Australians shop. We all know it, we see it, and open up a huge amount of opportunity for online retailers. Hopefully today's discussion really highlighted the importance of investing in digital channels to not only help attract shoppers, but to continually, improve the seamless online experience they are looking for. Combine that with a really good delivery experience, utilising some of the strategies that Rose and her customer panel shared. You have a good recipe for attracting and then nurturing online shoppers into long-term loyal customers and advocates. I'd like to thank our four speakers for today for their great insights, and thank you for joining us for our second webinar in the series. If you'd like more information on how Australia Post Solutions can help you optimise your delivery experience for customers, please either reach out to your Australia Post account manager or click on the call to action link here in the console. The next webinar we're going to have is entitled Getting Ready for the Next Surge in Online Shopping, where we'll look at how you can prepare your operations to effectively handle the peak in online shopping in the pre-Christmas peak, as we call. So, to my fellow Melburnians, stay safe and use your masks. To our Sydney cousins, please take care. To the rest of the country, please keep up the good work. So to everybody, stay safe. Thank you again and have a great day.